As you can clearly see, I don't have a game room. I've had a lot of people ask me for like a game room tour. This is it. Now I have a TV over there that does like Switch and Xbox One. My TV in the bedroom does PlayStation 4, but I play most of my retro stuff right here, actually using the same monitor I use for my open heart surgery videos, because it's convenient. I can just plug in my Nintendo, or my Super Nintendo, or my Nintendo 64, whatever. But that's the problem. I have to plug in all of those individual systems and put the other ones back in the box and take something else out, and it gets pretty, what's the word I'm thinking of? Annoying. Now, other combo systems have come along, like the Classic 2. I'm actually a big fan of this system, have it plugged in most of the time, and it's also the system I bring with me to conventions, because it does Nintendo and Super Nintendo. However, it's missing something. Wouldn't it be nice if I could do Sega Genesis as well? Everybody needs more Sega in their life, that's a guarantee. My friends over at RetroBit hooked it up with one of these, buddy. Look at this. This is the Trio Plus. This is Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and HDMI. The previous one is something like this, didn't quite have HDMI on here, but it does all those three things and a lot more, and we're going to get into that too. Oh my goodness, where are my manners? How are you feeling? You got John Riggs here. I thank you for watching. I love showing off new technology, new games, things of that nature. So if you haven't done so yet, you can subscribe if you'd like. I always have new videos coming out all the time. The system looks exactly like this, because this is the system. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, what's the difference between this and, like, say, a Retron from Hyperkin? Well, this one here actually plays the games from the cartridge. Something like a Retron 5 just basically takes the game, dumps the ROM into the system, and then plays it that way. So in doing that, it doesn't play a lot of hacks, not a lot of homebrews. It has its issues. This one plays it straight off the cartridge, so I think we're going to be able to see a whole lot more hacks and homebrews and more like multi-carts. We'll be able to work on something like this, and we're going to test all those out coming up in this video. On the back, you got your HDMI as well as your standard cables, and for this monitor over here, this is not HDMI, so I'll be using these in this video today. And then your power cord is the micro USB. And if you're wondering where to plug in your controllers, it's right there. It's kind of convenient, right? You can do Super Nintendo, Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and all three work with each system too. Of course, Nintendo will be a little bit harder to play games like for the Super Nintendo because of its lack of buttons. Along with the system, you also get the power cord and the HDMI. And then you have what's basically the new standard for RetroBit. It's one of these controllers, which is actually pretty comfortable. And one thing I love about RetroBit, super long cords, man. At 6'5", I have a wingspan of about that, and that's still not stretching long enough. These are like 6-foot cables here. So let's plug this in, and we're going to show it straight from the monitor. I wanted to prove to you that it's playing from the system to the monitor, so I won't be using any game capture footage of this time. I'm just going to point it. I know it's the lazy way out, but it's my preferred way because I want you to prove, to see what I'm seeing as I'm seeing it, and not try to intersplice it later on. I want you and I to see the same thing at the same time. And before I plugged it in, I wanted to show you this down here too. It actually has a little switch on there, and if you're wondering about that, it's not what states to play it in. It's not like New Jersey, Pennsylvania. NTSC means the United States of America. PE is PAL Europe. There's NJ, which is NTSC Japan. And then PA, which stands for PAL Australia. So theoretically, these games should work with that. To test those out, you would need some PAL games. And of course I have PAL games. I'm a huge video game hoarder. It's my pleasure to check them out on this. I've never checked them out before, so this will be the first time I'm actually checking out those PAL games using a system like this, too. It's going to be awesome. Now, although this system did come with its own controllers, I'm using one of these controllers, which is also, conveniently, from RetroBit. I just think they look cool. The very first game I always want to try with all new systems is Castlevania 3, because it has such a huge, high circuit board in there that most clone systems won't play this game. I gotta crank it all the way up for the Nintendo setting. And hey, look at that. That was pretty good to me. Looks good to me. Now, here you go. Now, you can kind of see a little bit. Not that, but like when I jump, and not up there. But can you kind of see how it screens out a little bit? No, it's not a deal breaker. However, it is kind of noticeable. But not noticeable every time. I'm okay with that. Now, this game here is another game with a high circuit board setting, and that's L'Empereur. And as you can see, not a good look for the French Emperor here. Not a good look for Napoleon. Actually, that's a little psychedelic. I would say 99% of the Nintendo library is going to play on this. I have a feeling that if you're playing games like this, you're probably already having a Nintendo system, and you're probably not using this for something like this. So I'm okay with that too. Now it does Nintendo, but what about Famicom? Well, if you have a Famicom converter, I happen to have one right here. I'll try the Honeybee this time. Famicom games, you gotta put them in backwards. Yeah, it looks like Fire Emblem to me. All right, so we got Famicom games working on this thing. Pretty cool, man. How about homebrews? No problems here. I love this game. Boo! Get in there. Now, admittedly, I've never played this game before, so let's see if it works just by not switching anything. I may have to switch it over. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing under the NTSC. So with this one, I think I have to go to PAL. Oh, and look at that. We got it working. That's pretty handy. You can play PAL games on this system. There's a lot of PAL games that never came out in America, like the Smurfs. I'm sure there's an asterisk game somewhere in there. Oh, fun. Oh, that's my team. Hold on. I was going the wrong way. Alright, so with Super Nintendo, it's all about that Super FX chip. And it looks like the Super FX chip is not going to be a problem with the Super Retro Trio Plus. Here we go. Ooh. That's a fun little game. Oh, you know what's funny? I forgot to set it back to the to America there. Now again, I know it says Super Nintendo, but what about Super Famicom? It looks like the plastic is just perfect for something like this. And with Super Famicom, it's just a cosmetic thing. It's not a lockout thing. And in this case, it doesn't mind either. I haven't played this game much, obviously. Can it do repros? Of course it can. Alright, looks good to me. Now I do have a Super EverDrive, and the plastic is just thick on this one. However, it looks like it wants to slowly go in. There we go. And I don't have a doubt that this would work either. I used to have the power pack for the NES, for the Nintendo. Unfortunately, it finally crapped out on me, so I gotta find a new EverDrive. Need to find myself an EverDrive or something like that for the Nintendo here. Yeah, and this is playing off of the Super EverDrive. So Super EverDrives, if you have one of those, they work just fine. No problem at all. Uh-oh. Look at that pretty face. This is a multi-cart from Retro Circuits. It looks like it's not going to be a problem at all. Change the games here. Yeah, looks good to me. And again, with a PAL region game. Let's see what happens. Now this looks like it'll work just fine. Sometimes some PAL games will have the, oh sorry, this is only for PAL systems. And if that's the case, I bet you can switch it over and I bet it'll work just fine. Yeah, there we go. Alright, PAL games are good to go. Moving on to Genesis. Now watch this. Simpsons edition of Streets of Rage 2 here. Now this is Revenge of Shinobi. However, if you're familiar with Retro Circuits multi-carts, there's a magnet idea. So if you scan the magnet in front of it, like that, it'll switch it to the next game. And this system has no problem doing that at all. They also make these multi-carts, Retro Circuits does, that has these games on here, but if you hit reset twice, it'll move on to a different game. Isn't that crazy? Oh, let me go back to this. Here's what I wanted to show you. And here's, you know, Streets of Rage, right? But watch what happens. Watch what happens when I switch it to Japan. Isn't that funny? It knows what system it's playing on. It's crazy. Alright, finally. That looks good to me. Hey, look at this. We got a PAL game working on the Super Retro Trio 3 Plus. Little Psycho Pinball from Codemasters. I bet Thor was all over this game. Alright, so all in all, very impressive. The fact that there's like a couple of Nintendo games that won't work on it. My only caveat is when you play Sega Genesis games on this controller. See, when you play Sega Genesis games on this controller, here's your A and B, and then your C button is this trigger over here. So like that's jump usually. So if you're gonna get this for Sega Genesis, I would highly recommend also getting a Sega Genesis controller. Other than that, man, it's got my vote of approval. I can play games for all 3 systems. This is the perfect thing for me to bring to conventions so people can play and test out other games that I'm selling. Another awesome thing from Retrobit. You're awesome, guys. If you're looking to purchase yours, they have it at castlemaniagames.com. I'll link them in the description below. Till next video, take care. We'll see ya.